Welcome to Ship of a New Story, day 5 on this journey together in exploration, the shift from striving to become best in the world to all be best for the world. And now we have come to a point where it's time to set the goals or set the destination. And it's really time now to not only reflect, but also to make new intentions. And when we talk about destination future, the destination itself is always moving and the horizon is always in front. And the question we're going to work with today is how can we co-create and intentionally choose stories that are best for the world? And this means that we need to find ways to work and ways to engage, ways to co-create and ways to intentionally choose this future. We have prepared a little workshop for this that has been part of the ship since the first idea 3 years ago about the ship of a new story. So we have used this workshop both in the creation of it. We have used it while we were engaging at Almedalen last year. We have had it as part of Skåne Innovation Week, and we've also made it a part of the ship itself. So at least once every trip with this ship, we conduct this workshop. And you can do it now, or you can do it at any time. And you can actually ask any question also into this workshop. So the workshop itself, or the format, is an open format, and it's digitally distributed by Google Forms. So in the end, there will be a link to this Google form, and you can also do this in different arenas, various times of the year, or if you want to engage in a certain question, and so on. But for this purpose today, we're going to ask this specific question: how we can co-create and intentionally choose stories that are best for the world. And we also have some kind of introduction here, which is about how we can see things that we haven't seen before. And when we then move into the question, hopefully we will move in there with new perspectives and hopefully also a new perception. Some of you who are here today have already onboarded the ship. If you haven't onboarded the ship, we suggest you to start with the onboarding exercise, which is another workshop. It's called What is My Intention? So please do that short introductory workshop first. It only takes like 5 minutes, and then come back to this workshop. So I'm going to share with you some slides here, and for that purpose we have prepared a short presentation, but it's not like a presentation, it's more like an eye-opener. So hopefully you will enjoy this, and once again, welcome to Ship of a New Story and this workshop, a co-creative workshop. And you can also do it by yourself or together with other people. Let's start this journey. So, creating stories of our future where we all are best for the world. That means to leave no one behind. And best for the world includes the previous paradigm. We can call it best in the world. And best for the world is the direction. So that is why we need to both navigate and create. Ship of a New Story. Yeah, the purpose is to together explore the shift. As I said in the welcoming part, that instead of striving to be best in the world, we can all be best for the world. For now, we have been talking about democracy, society development, business development, and personal development. And we can actually add any development question into this, or transformation question into this ship. Okay, so when I was a kid, I was told that, okay, you need knowledge. So knowledge was very important, and knowledge was actually how everything was built up upon. After a while in the system, I realized that knowledge isn't enough. I also need experience. And this is something that is seen, at least in the Western world, for the latest, I don't know, 60, 70 years, that you have to combine knowledge and experience. Today, we have realized that we also need to look at the world with new eyes and connect the dots intentionally. And there is, of course, creativity as an important part, and also the intent itself. And during a lot of the panels and dialogues, we have heard it over and over again. We need to have an intent. We need to have a purpose. When we have a purpose, we always have a purpose, but when it comes clear, it's also easier to co-create and communicate, and also being aware of when I work in the direction of my purpose. So setting intent and deliberately connect those dots into something that we want to create. To be able to do that, we have to realize that the future isn't something we should be equipped to meet. It is something we create. And looking at this tree here, standing here, we realize that there has to be something beneath the surface. Right now, we just see the shadow of the tree, but that could also be a representation of what is beneath the earth. Conventions is a very interesting word, which is, I believe, very important for us to realize that we have made assumptions about the world. This is a photograph from 100 years ago, something. When you took a photograph at that moment, you were supposed to be very, very, yeah, you could not laugh at all, because you had to be serious when a picture was taken. So the convention back then was that, yeah, you have to be serious about things, and especially when there was a photographer taking a photo of you. Probably this is not the convention today, and you use photography for so many new reasons today. So the conventions, the assumptions we make of the world, or the decisions we take, and the truths that we choose, are both enabling us and also limiting us. For instance, we need those conventions to be able to communicate. And for instance, we can take the convention of a red strawberry. Think of a red strawberry. What is a red strawberry? You probably come up with a picture in your head, something like this. The thing is that the red strawberry actually is exactly the opposite of what the convention of it is. I mean, this is a convention to be able to talk about it. So this is what we call a red strawberry, but a red strawberry is actually the totally opposite of it. So strawberry that we call red is everything but red. But this is a convention we need to be able to communicate. We're going to do a little exercise. I don't know why exactly, but you're going to take a spelling bee in spelling the word cat in English. So first student comes in and says C-A-T. Ka-ching! That's right. That's the learning convention we have, right? C-A-T. But then comes in a second student writing K-A-T. That's wrong. You're not supposed to write it like that. And that is also the convention. There is a right and there is a wrong. But then comes in the third student, spelling it XWQ. That is also wrong. So the convention here is that there is one right answer and every other answer is wrong. That's the learning convention most of us have been brought up with. There is one right answer. It's in the end of the book. You can't look at it, because then you cheat, and you shouldn't collaborate. So that's a learning convention that is part of the system that we have built. We can't say that it's someone else's problem, because the system is us. But this is a normal learning convention. There is a shift going on, and this is interesting, because then you can ask yourself, and the system, of course, is CAT and KAT and XWQ. What do we need to be able to communicate? I mean, is KAT and XWQ as wrong? Are they two equally wrong? I think most people would argue that KAT is at least a better spelling than XWQ, because then you at least get the idea of a cat, of the word cat. So that's the first step, and that is something that we probably at that step already is taken more or less. I mean, we are not that rigid today about exact spelling and so on. It's more, what do you want to communicate? And as long as that comes in at the first place, I mean, even if it's not the best spelling, maybe it is at least something that we can understand. But then we take the next step, talking about the best spelling, because you could also argue about, could KAT maybe even be a better spelling than CAT? I don't know. What do you think? There are actually people that believe that KAT is a better spelling than CAT. You have all seen it in the dictionaries. Between brackets like this, you can see KAT written because it's how you pronounce it. So KAT is the way we pronounce the word cat in English. And I don't know, but maybe in a near future, or in a more distant future, or maybe not at all, cat might be spelled KAT in English. So this is a convention that we can have various versions of. Perspective is a very interesting part of this. Very often people talk about, yeah, your perspective is this and yours. So that this is from beneath the surface, looking up at the boat where we sail. So you can see us up there on the surface, and this is a perspective that most people don't really have. We have heard it in this during this week about ocean literacy, and the example here during Ship2020 have been Öresund, one of the most trafficked sounds in the world, and at the same time it's a sound. it's a living place. It's a place where both people and man and humans are interacting, and beneath the surface there is a landscape where you have the grass and you have the hills and you have the slopes and you have the stones and everything. That's a picture we don't see because it's not on the maps, and it's, if you look at the ocean, it's just like a plain surface. So this is a perspective change. Very often when we talk about the perspectives, we tend to use this as a way of talking about perspective. Both of those are looking at the same figure on the floor. One says 6 and one says 9. So there are two different perspectives. That is, from each perspective, the right answer, if there is a right answer. And that's the next question, because those are still looking at something that is in 2 dimensions. And next picture is about 3 dimensions. So depending on your perspective, you will get a totally different worldview if you're still in 2 dimensions. So a 2-dimensional worldview in one direction will give us a rectangular shape, and a 2-dimensional worldview in another direction will give us a circle. And the interesting thing is that there is a form that connects the circle with this rectangle of shape, but then you need a 3rd dimension. That's what this picture tells us. And then we actually go into new ways of looking at it, because then it's not only a perspective, it's also a matter of perception. I don't know how many people that have been looking at the world from a totally new perception, that is, for us in this case, from the moon. I believe it can't be many. It has to be very few in numbers that have that perception of the world, being able to see the whole world in one picture. And perception forms reality. It actually creates reality. We often talk about perception as something that is describing something or way of looking at something, but it's also the way we create stuff. For instance, this picture. What is this picture? A lot of people, when I show this picture, they see this wonderful colored bird. And then all of a sudden someone, very often in the back row, says, no, it's a human. It's a human, someone says. No, it's not a human. It's a parrot. No, it's a human, someone says. So, I mean, first you have to look at something to be able to see it. But then you have to see it to be able to grasp the concept. And to be able to do that, you need your perception and your fantasy. And you also, when you see this human, because it is a human that is body painted here, you can see the arm going up around here, the head, the leg, and the foot on whatever it is that this person is sitting on. And when you realize that, you can't, I would say, it's almost impossible to unsee what you just have seen. We can have another example of that. Which direction is this bus driving? And it's not like a tricky question saying, no, the bus is standing still. So the question is, does it go in direction A, or does it go in the direction B? Or the third alternative, I can't say if it goes A or B. So the first alternative in direction A, second alternative in direction B, and the third alternative, it's impossible to say if it goes in any of those directions, in either A or B. Interesting with this picture is that most grown-ups, people like me, they say, you can't say. I can't determine if it's going A or B. And then there are some people saying, I know that it goes in direction A, and someone says, I know it goes in direction B. So what is the right answer? When I ask these questions to people that are younger people that are in their maybe first 10 years or something, in primary school or in a daycare, or well, it could be like 4 or 5 years, I very often get the answer A. So A, they say it's A. Then there is someone says A and B and B and A, and someone says B and someone says I can't determine, but most of them say A. You know why? There is a reason why. The reason is that in Sweden we have the traffic on the right lane. That means that A is the direction, because as the kids very often tell me, there is a door on the other side, and it's in just in the position of the A, but on the other side. So this bus is driving in the direction of A. How can we then, with new perception and new ways of looking at the world, create the stories we want to engage in? Because if we continue with the stories that we are already told, we won't get any new perspectives, any new perception, and we are actually more or less stuck. So how can we then co-create and intentionally choose stories that are best for the world? And how can we use the large testbed the world is given by the coronavirus to find solutions and systems that are best for the world? Those are the questions for today's workshop. And what you do now is that you go to this short link, bit.ly/ship of a new story. Then there is a line, minus line, and then the workshop. The first you do is that you write down the question in the first part of the workshop. So because this is again a Google form that can be used over and over again for different questions. So the question is, how can we co-create and intentionally choose stories that are best for the world? And how can we use the large testbed the world is given by the coronavirus to find solutions and systems that are best for the world? So find a person or people around you, maybe more of them, maybe 3, 4, 5, sit down in groups and work with the questions, and then fill in the form and please send it into the ship. This is how we together right now at this spot at least, can update the ship and also ask new questions. So if you have new questions that arise, there is also a question for that. So please help out with the workshop, and thanks a lot for that. Write down the short link, Ship of a New Story, the workshop. And now I'm going to end this short presentation and look at you right in the eyes. Together we have an extreme opportunity right now. We are in a extreme slope, or the change curve is really accelerating like this. So what if we can look at this change curve and see it as a possibility curve? What can then happen? And how can we deliberately and intentionally choose the future we want? Thank you very much for being part of this workshop, and all of the answers will go directly in by this form into a spreadsheet, and we can use that in the coming versions of Ship of a New Story. Thank you very much, and looking forward to see you during this day. We have a program full of interesting topics, and we have nice panels, and also summing up some of the ideas that have been we have been working with during this week. And in the end of the day, there is a daily sonar, and welcome back. And also, please engage in community, engage in your organizations, and engage in your own life. And then we can all be best for the world. Thank you.